Chapter 60. Perjury. Deuteronomy chapter 19, verses 15 to 21. One witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity, or for any sin, in any sin that he sinneth. At the mouth of 2 witnesses, or at the mouth of 3 witnesses shall the matter be established. If a false witness rise up against any man to testify against him that which is wrong, then both the men, between whom the controversy is, shall stand before the Lord, before the priests and the judges, which shall be in those days. And the judges shall make diligent inquisition, and behold, if the witness be a false witness, and hath testified falsely against his brother, then shall ye do unto him as he had thought to have done unto his brother, so shalt thou put the evil away from among you. And those which remain shall hear and fear, and shall henceforth commit no more any such evil among you. And thine eye shall not pity, but life shall go for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Deuteronomy chapter 19, verses 15 to 21. The abuse of justice is a religious offence. As a result, this law specifies that all cases of perjury must be tried before a court of priests and judges. Verse 17. The false witness has done more than attempt to destroy a personal enemy. He has attacked, by his perjury, the justice system, and he has in effect declared the God of justice to be irrelevant or non-existent for him. False witness has as its basis, first, a desire to destroy an enemy by testifying falsely against him. Malice and hatred outweigh any concern for justice. The paramount concern is to discredit and condemn a personal enemy. Second, false witness can have as its motive personal gain. Bribery for perjury is not uncommon. I recall some years ago being told quietly by a bank teller that great sums were spent to bribe witnesses and gain an acquittal for a flagrantly evil man. Third, a man can perjure himself in order to deflect evidence of his own guilt. A lax attitude towards perjury warps and destroys a legal system. The laws against perjury in the Western world come from the Bible, from the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbour. Exodus chapter 20, verse 16. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 20. Without a biblical faith, such laws cannot stand, and non-Christian cultures routinely resort to torture. In biblical law, the oath and this law against false witness replace torture. Faith, conscience, and the sanctity of an oath provide the assurance of honest testimony. As Christian faith wanes, perjury and then torture replace it. In Proverbs chapter 6 verses 16 and 19, chapter 20 verse 28 and chapter 24 verse 28, God's hatred for the false witness is spelled out. In the New Testament, this law is again affirmed in Matthew chapter 15 verse 19 and Luke chapter 18 verse 20, also in Matthew chapter 19 verse 18 and Romans 13 verse 9. In Proverbs 19 verses 5 and 9, it is emphasized that the punishment of perjury is mandatory. At one time in Texas, in cases involving capital offenses, the punishment for perjury was death. In 1937 in California, we find the following judgments. It is time the citizens of this state, California, fully realize that the biblical injunction, "Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbour," has been incorporated into the law of this state, and that every person who, having taken an oath that he will testify, declare, dispose, or certify truly before any competent tribunal, officer, or person, in any of the cases in which such an oath may by law be administered, willfully and contrary to such oath, states as true any material matter which he knows to be false, is guilty of perjury, and is punishable by imprisonment in the state prison for not less than 1 nor more than 14 years. People v. Rosen, 1937. 20th California Appellate, 2nd 445, 66 P2D, 1208, 1210, McComb, J. Without a biblical foundation and faith, and a knowledge of the sanctity of God's law, a society begins to disintegrate into anarchy, and coercion and torture arise. Every society needs cohesion. If religion does not supply it, then coercion and torture will. Churches which are antinomian have contributed substantially to our growing anarchy. The penalty for perjury is, in God's law, exactly what the trial called for against the accused. If restitution was required, the perjurer made similar restitution to the innocent party. If the case called for the death penalty, the perjurer was executed. In verse 21, the so-called lex talionis simply holds that the false witness paid the price equivalent to what the innocent party paid if found guilty. Perjury could also be used to defend a guilty man, to save him from the consequences of his offence. In such cases, both the accused and his false witness paid the penalty. Despite the insistence of some scholars that the lex talionis was literally applied in Israel, that is, an eye torn out for another man's lost eye, there is no evidence whatsoever that this was the legal practice. The stipulation of at least 2 or 3 witnesses, or more than one form of evidence, rests on the fact that all men are both sinners and also fallible. Corroboration is thus necessary. The integrity of the judicial system is a moral and a religious fact. In the long run, legal reform without religious reform is not a tenable hope. There must be a religious reformation before there is judicial or civil reform, or the alternative is coercion. Coercion eventually produces greater evils. The goal of the false witness is the miscarriage of justice. He wants to alter the outcomes to favour evil where it suits him. He wants God's creation to move on his terms. In verse 20, we are told why the strict punishment of perjury is necessary. The rest of the people will fear. They will be afraid of treating the justice system lightly. Here, as in Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 13, we have clearly affirmed the doctrine of deterrence. Men will be more apt to obey God's law when they see it faithfully enforced. The literal reading of verse 16 is very telling. The false witness is, literally, a violent witness or a witness of violence. Although his offence is a matter of words, he is doing violence to God's justice system. The words, that which is wrong, can be rendered as that which is apostate or apostasy. In other words, perjury means abandoning the faith. It is an act of violence against man and against God's justice system. This is the meaning of the commandment, "Thou shalt not bear false witness." Exodus chapter 20, verse 16, Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 20. In verse 9, as he had thought to have done unto his brother, that is, his fellow man, is literally, as he had purposed. In other words, perjury is a deliberate and purposive offence whose intention is evil. Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 and 39 is sometimes cited to hold that our Lord set this law aside. This is in direct contradiction to his declaration in Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 to 20, that his purpose is to fulfill or enforce the law, not to nullify it. Because perjury is a serious and a revolutionary offence, we are told plainly in verse 21 that we are to have no pity for a perjurer. His offence strikes at the foundations of justice. It needs to be added that this law deals with perjury, not with errors. In the course of testimony, some witnesses, frightened and intimidated, sometimes confuse details. Such errors do not mean a sustained false testimony, but an incidental error, a very different thing. The law depends on trustworthy testimony, and perjury is an offence against the life of the law. The religious trial before priests and judges underlines this fact. The integrity of the law must be preserved, and the false witness, sometimes even more than the criminal, threatens the very existence of justice. This is why verse 18 states that the judges must investigate diligently every case dealing with perjury. Not to do so would be an act of contempt on their part, both for justice and their offence. In our time, we see that more and more agents provocateurs are used, people who urge others to commit acts they had not intended to commit. Such agents push foolish men into violence and their arrest. This too is an abuse of justice, a form of aiding and abetting crime.